it today, which is one of the reasons why you're kind of getting short notice with things. I'm just going to highlight the items that are in the book. It is 130 pages, so there's a lot of information to take in. One thing that you'll notice that's a difference between the book versus the handouts that I provide to the board members is that I kind of turn all the accounting jargon and I kind of move it over to what your district's actually seeing on hand. So when it comes to a lot of the accounting terms that we have, it involves.
Thanks.
When it comes to the accounting terms like GASB 75 and 68, which are your other post-employment benefits, and your health benefits that are happening in addition to your pension plans, that's mixed into all the numbers that are in those books. So we pull those numbers out, make it a little easier to understand when we're going over the numbers tonight. One of the most important things about that book is actually probably one of the last few pages that show up in it, though, is whether or not you have recommendations, and it says a whole lot about your district. There are no recommendations, and we also have no suggestions, which is another form of a recommendation but a lower level. What happens during our audit is that we come in and we're looking at a lot of different areas. We're checking for internal controls, compliance with the state. The state has a whole separate manual that they provide us that we have to follow, in addition to what we're already looking at as auditors. If the board has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them as I'm going along, so feel free to stop me. But moving on to the numbers side of things, we're going to begin with our revenues. We had approximately $11,051,000 this year. This was an increase of $184,000 over the prior year. Our tax levy and special revenue tax increased from the prior year, but our biggest increase was the tuition from the individuals. That was actually decreasing, caused by the pre-K expansion aid that we have received, which is recorded on our special revenue side. We also received a little bit less this year compared to prior years in terms of receiving money from other districts. We received $1,100,000 in grants, which seems like a lot, but significantly of this was $936,000 from the preschool expansion grant. Revenues increased $2,788,000 compared to 10 years ago, and our largest increase was related to the tax levy and our special revenue fund received. When you look at page 2 of the graphs, we've given you a 10-year comparison. You'll notice a lot of these graphs don't move, especially your tax levy. It actually just kind of steadily goes up. There's not significant spikes happening here. The federal sources is our biggest change over the last 10 years, where the last few years we had the COVID grants. They finally are coming to an end. You'll see that this year is more on par with 2021, and then next year probably go down even just a little more. On the state sources side, the first part of the graph, we actually split it into 2 pieces this year. So this year you'll see that for the most part it kind of just stays steadily going up. Last year we did have a one-time increase relating from debt service aid that was received, and then it kind of came back down again this year. The second piece, we actually pulled out the preschool expansion aid from that state aid source, and we have put it into its own category to show that a little better, because otherwise it made it look like your state aid had really skyrocketed, which wasn't really the case. On the miscellaneous income side of things, the last couple years we've had some great interest rates happening. We can only hope that it continues and we kind of take advantage of it as long as possible. One of the benefits of having reserves and having extra cash funds on hand is so that we can get extra interest and help kind of offset other categories that are lacking against state sources. The tuition, you'll see that very much plummeted, but again, it's because we have our preschool expansion aid now, so we're no longer needing to bring in funds from families, but we do bring in income from families when they come to our summer programs.
Question here. Go ahead. Can I talk about it first? Other than tuition, which you just mentioned, and I know like the federal sources, you said like that trend might continue to like decline a little bit, like looking at the bar graphs for the COVID funds for those years. But do you think most of these trends will stay on track, or?
I would say that's usually kind of how we see the 10-year trends. Usually the state sources for most school districts are kind of seeing a decline.
so just to be clear, those are two different sources, the 24 and 25. State aid is not, the state aid preschool is separate. So if you combine them, you're looking at in 2025, $1.8 million. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the other considerations you have to keep in mind too with the state preschool aid is whether or not they're gonna continue to give that aid. One thing that we noticed this past year is that if you had any remaining funds at the end of the year, they did penalize school districts for having those extra funds. So this upcoming year, they had a reduction in their aid that they had received, so it was the first time I've ever seen it. We've had another district that has had the preschool aid for at least 15 years, and while we always in the back of our mind are aware that they're gonna lose that aid, they in fact were now losing it kind of out of their control. With maybe they were saving it for the next year because they knew they were gonna have an expense coming up that was gonna affect them, and now they weren't able to use the full amount.
So are we, I mean, we see a large increase somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 250,000 from 24 to 25. Are we expecting
So-
800,000 in 26? Do we know?
I'm sorry?
In, well, 24, it looks like, reading bar graph is maybe 450, maybe it's 500 versus 800, so it's a jump.
Grants, this is for the state aid for preschool?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, I think that would be decided on how many students are anticipating are going to enroll in preschool, and if the state continues to.
well, I don't know the formula, but based on what I saw in the census, we're one kid less this year than last year in preschool, is that accurate? Yeah.
One kid less. We have 4 classrooms, so we get funded based on the 60 students that we have, less any special ed we anticipate come in. So we're
Right, but our
getting
enrollment
funded-
this year is not significantly different than last year, or
No, we're
24,
getting funded, I believe, on 53 students from the state.
Right, so what explains, I guess my question is, what's the jump in 24, where it looks like, again, it's a bar graph?
In the top bar, right?
What's that?
You're looking at the top piece or the preschool?
I'm looking at state aid preschool.
Yeah. I think I can answer. That has to do with, we just started the preschool expansion, and we had 3 classrooms at that time, and I don't know if you remember, the students that were in there, the parents, were notified in January 1 of that year, and they received all the money back that they had paid. So we added 1 additional classroom, which was, I think, an additional 15 students, so that might account for the additional revenue that we received.
You do see a trend with the school districts the first year that they implement the program, the aid is a lot less than the second year, and then they're on. So your aid next year would probably be much more closer to what we had received this year.
We consider to be more static going forward.
Right, it'd be more steady. It became a lot more easier to predict things too, as we kind of, the first year, trying to implement it and figure out how you're able to actually spend the funds. And how much money or many students are really gonna start coming to you instead of going to the preschool programs surrounding us.
I mean, obviously, and I don't know what that money's going to be used for, like tuition was, I don't know, and I assume whatever portion of that 120,000, 23, 24 was majority preschool. We're collecting 4 times that from the state. So that's pretty vulnerable from my perspective, I don't know enough about the budgeting, I'm not on that committee,
Yeah.
but just for the broad view, if you're using that for general funding, folks sitting in the audience, you should be aware that if that goes away, then the bills are going up significantly. Because I don't know where they're allowed to use that fund,
Yeah,
but they're
to
being.
give a little more history, with the jump from 24 to 25, I kind of suspect some of that too is like, parents didn't know about the program at the beginning of the year. We only got approved for it like halfway through the school year. So I think there's like an increased interest in it, right? But like, yeah, if the state says, hey, we're not gonna fund that anymore, I mean, what we were doing previously is the parents paid for it, so yeah.
Yeah, I remember parents that were up to me, I think it was during soccer season, actually, when they got the notification, they were getting their tuition free, when the money came back, I don't know. Yeah, but I know it was in the fall that they were aware, because I can remember speaking, I can tell you who it was, but do that, to that person, that went to Tahiti. But that's a lot of vulnerability from my perspective, I don't know where that money's going on the budget committee, but it is sort of getting in the general fund, that'll make me nervous.
Well, I do wanna consider that